everyone, and welcome once again to KGRA radio presentation of the Cameron Files, exclusively on KGRAradio.com every Tuesday night. Right here, you're going to get the Grant Man, the intrepid brother from another mother, all the way up in the Great White North. Grant, how are you doing? And I understand you're not in the White North. You're down in the warm South right now.
So no, I'm sort of heading back. I feel like Steve Bassett on a lifelong pilgrimage around the world talking about weird stuff. I'm actually in Roswell, New Mexico tonight.
Wow.
So we're from the center of the universe here, broadcasting, and we're going to be talking to Clifford Stone tomorrow. We're going to do some taping. I want to see these piles of documents that he's collected his whole life. And then we're heading to Boulder for American Thanksgiving. We've already had ours in Canada, but we're heading to Boulder on, I guess, Thursday.
Fantastic. Well, I can tell you that, an American Thanksgiving is, that's one of my favorite traditions. Everyone can tell by looking at me that eating traditions are my favorite. Well, Grant, you have been on a whirlwind tour down here in the States, and you've been super busy, and, you made a stop here with us, and it was a wonderful visit, wonderful to get to see you and Desta, and so I know you're probably looking forward to getting home and relaxing a little bit, huh?
Yeah, we've been gone almost a month now, but we've had a lot of major discoveries. We had another one just the other day, and we had a lot when we were in Laughlin. So it's been a pretty weird thing, a lot of stories. And I may actually, I don't want to take away from Ron, because my guest tonight is one of the better, it would be in the top 10 UFO sort of abduction stories. So I don't want to take it away from him, but some way down the road, I'm going to do maybe a whole program just on updates. There's so much, people cannot believe how much material is happening just with what's happened to us in the last couple of days. I'll just mention one, and then we'll go to Ron. We had an incident. We were in Tucson, as you know, and we were there for about maybe 10 days. And we decided I'd go down to see the James Mcdonald collection of material, and he was the big researcher in the 60s and the early 70s.
Right, an entire library. So he's got an entire library.
There was maybe 65 archives boxes, and I've seen this stuff before. And so we went down there, and it was actually Desta that made the discovery. It was like 5 minutes before we left. She discovered, they're doing the whole atom program with the metals and all this kind of stuff. And actually, James Mcdonald got a very bizarre piece of metal that had come out of the sky, landed, dug itself into somebody's garden, was all red hot. He waited for it to cool down, pulled this thing out. And then in 1967, when Mcdonald was doing all the UFO research there, NASA had a lab there, a space and lunar lab there. And this woman had had this piece for many years, decided to take it down to them. And so we have the photographs, we have all the reports, how this stuff moved around. And of course, we put on the internet some of the documents we put on there. And basically, everybody said, well, give us this, give us that, where's this, where's that, and all this attack. And it's sort of like, would you like a pie and coffee with that order? It's like everybody's just like demanding all this stuff. But it was very, very bizarre. We had all the documents, and the archivist came after us, get those files back into the folder, because we're trying to madly try to photocopy this stuff. And you're touching the photos with your hands. You're supposed to wear gloves, and it was just like a real mess. But we managed to get this whole file of this very, very bizarre piece, almost like, you remember a couple of weeks ago we had the Bob White piece on. Right. This is similar to the Bob White piece, but much more bizarre. Happened in Illinois in 1939. And so now we're going to try to track the piece. We've got all the reports made of 99% nickel. So this is the kind of stuff we're sort of running into, where, we're finding these files, we're hearing these bizarre stories, piles of synchronicities, and just very bizarre. So it's been a good trip.
Yeah, it's been a productive trip, it sounds.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's 6 minutes after the top of the hour. We're ready to get Ron on here. And so, Grant, take it away, my brother.
Okay, good evening. It's Grant Cameron. You're listening to the Cameron Files. It's November the 20th, 2018. And I always say thank you for taking time from your valuable schedule to listen to me. Tonight I have a guest that I've known for a number of years. I used to go to UFO Congress quite a few years in a row, and my guest tonight is Ron Johnson. He used to be coming there as well, and I used to hang around with the Salt Lake City group. So there was myself and Marley and Cheryl and Chris and Mickey, and Ron would come along, and he was a very quiet guy, really didn't say much. So I was around him. I never really talked to him. I just knew he had a very weird story. So then just in the last year, I've actually got in contact with him, heard his story. And when I heard that he'd flown the ship, I decided I had to talk to this guy. And so he has a very incredible story, and I want everybody to share it with everybody tonight. So good evening, Ron, and welcome, and thanks for taking time to talk to me on my little show here and tell your very incredible story.
Oh, thank you, Grant. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So let's go back. You've journaled this whole thing. You've recorded this whole thing through your whole life, and you live in Utah. And you have a connection to the LDS Church, and you have lived with us your whole life. So let's maybe sort of give a brief sort of start from the beginning and sort of describe to people back in California when you suddenly realize something weird is going on.
Okay. For me, it all started back in Southern California. I grew up in Hermosa Beach, and my uncle had a horse ranch out just outside of Riverside. And he had me come out and stay there and help him put in a water line once. Yeah, this is back in 1968. I was 14 years old, and that's where I had my first encounter with a non-human entity. After that, I've got so many, I got to kind of go through them here pretty quick. But after that, in 1973, I was working in Grand Teton National Park, and my parents had moved to Price, Utah at that time, and I got a job in the Grand Tetons. It was a summer job. And I would take trips back and forth from the Tetons to Price about every other weekend to visit my parents. And on one trip back, it was in August of 73, I was up by, it was just between Evanston and Woodruff, Utah, on Utah Highway 16. And I had an encounter there with a flash of light, and there was a roughly 6 hours of missing time.
Wow.
On that trip.
Can you describe the first being that you saw back in California?
Sure, you bet. We were working during the day. It was pretty hot down there. In the summertime, it gets pretty darn warm down there in Riverside. And we had finished for the night, and I went in, we ate dinner, and I went to bed early. And right about midnight, I woke up. Something just woke me up out of a deep sleep, and had the strangest feeling there was somebody in the room with me. And I could see a green glow kind of in my peripheral vision. And I kind of rolled my head back, turned around, kind of looked behind me, and there was this entity standing there at the foot of my bed. And he was probably, I'm going to guess, 8 foot tall, because his head was right up against the ceiling. And the old house that my uncle had at the ranch had 8-foot ceilings in it. And this thing it had a big bald head, big black round eyes, a real sharp pointed chin, a small mouth, very petite looking nose, no ears at all, just had 2 holes in the side of its head where the ears would be. And he didn't communicate with me or move or anything, and I just laid there like a spineless noodle, just shaking, scared to death. And I just closed my eyes and I prayed to God that it would just go away. And then when I opened my eyes, he was gone.
Did you know anything at that time about extraterrestrials, or did you think it was maybe sort of a ghost or a spiritual being or something? Or what was going through your head?
Well, the first thing I thought of was a ghost. I didn't know anything about ETs or anything like that. The only thing that I had seen on UFOs was what was in the Life magazine. Life magazine did an article. That's all. That's the only thing I knew about them. Didn't really know anything at all about ETs or anything. I didn't even know what this was. I just assumed it was a ghost, but
wow.
Now I know it wasn't.
And so was there a break between this incident and the one in the 1970s? So nothing happens till the 1970s?
Yeah, nothing happened that I can remember. Well, I started having these bizarre dreams after this encounter in Riverside. I would have this dream that I'd be in this, it was like a laboratory type setting, and they had this big, it was kind of a metal table in this room, and this same entity, the tall one with the pointed chin, would be off over to the side, and he was telling me in my mind to get up on this table, and there was another being laying on this table, and he would make me have intercourse with this.
Yeah. Okay. I remember. And this is something you really don't want to talk about. So just, yeah. Did you have any paranormal events? When I was in Nevada, just this last time, we started to talk about experiencers have these paranormal poltergeist things where things disappear, they reappear, things fly around the room. Did you have any of that kind of stuff going on?
Not at the time. Not until later, until about, the mid-70s up until currently now.
So give me an example of one of these sort of, sometimes they're called ports, where things appear, disappear, things fall out of the ceiling like coins. So give me sort of an example, one or two examples of things like that have happened to you.
Well, okay, my car keys is a good example. They would end up, I don't know how they would do it, but they would end up in my vehicle locked, sitting on the seat.
Wow.
Stuff like that. I had this happen in Seattle just recently at my sister's house. We had went out to dinner, and when we come back, she locked her car. We went up the stairs. She unlocked the door to her house, went in. I watched her set her keys on the little island she has in her kitchen.
Yeah.
And she went back into the bedroom. I sat down on the couch, and then she come out a little later, and she said, I got to get ready for work in the morning. We couldn't find the keys. We tore that whole house apart looking for her keys.
Yeah.
And she never went outside. And I made this stupid suggestion, maybe we better go down and look in the car. And she said, well, I didn't go down there. And so we both went down there with a flashlight. There the keys were, locked in her car, sitting on the driver's seat.
Wow.
How did they get there?
Yeah. Does your sister know about your bizarre stuff, and what's your reaction? Has she had anything happen to her?
She does. She has stuff happening to her. This entity that I'm seeing now that I call LV, she's having encounters with this same entity.
Okay.
Except for she's more discreet, more quiet about it than I am.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so the next entity is in the 70s that's when it gets pretty intense, right? Around middle
That's when
70s.
it starts.
Yeah. Okay, so go ahead.
So one night I went to bed. I got into bed, and all of a sudden I become paralyzed. I couldn't move. I was trying to force myself to move. And this big, bright light started shining through my bedroom window. It was kind of an old amber-colored light, and it just lit up the whole room. And I felt myself get up. And then when standing there, and what's odd is I was standing right in the middle of my body. I was out of my body. I was having an OBE. And I was standing right in the middle of the bed, right to my body. And I was trying to grab it. And I was panicky. I was really, really, I didn't know what was happening. I was having a hard time grasping this at the time. But I was standing there, and I'm just right on the verge of screaming. And then all of a sudden, this, it's like a portal, an opening opens up on the wall of my bedroom wall. And it had like a, I don't know how to describe this. It was like a lip around it, kind of reminded me like a cave opening.
Okay.
And then it opens up, and now inside my bedroom at this time, while this is going on, it's real, real bright, real hazy in there.
Okay.
And I'm looking off in there, and it's like looking off into another dimension, another scenario's going on, and there was these little beings in there, about, I don't know, they were probably about 3.5, maybe 4 feet at the most high. It was your typical gray, but at the time, I did not know what a gray was.
Okay.
And I was thinking, God, I died and went to hell. That's what I thought. And I'm just panicky. I'm trying to scream. I can't. And 2 of them come out of this opening into my bedroom. They kind of come over on the other side of the bed, and they stand there and watch me. And 2 more come out and kind of do the same thing. And then a 5th one comes out, and he's holding in his hand what looks like a giant salamander.
Okay.
And he comes over, and he holds it right up in front of me. Never says anything. I never hear anything from these things. And then they all proceed back through the opening, closes up, the light goes away, and all of a sudden I just real harshly, I just slam right back into my body and fall out of bed, screaming. Woke my parents up, everybody in the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
But how big was the opening? Was it like 4 or 5 feet across?
Oh no, I'm gonna say it was probably 6 feet around.
Okay.
It wasn't a perfect circle. It was, kind of rough. That's why.
Go ahead. Is that the only time you encountered a portal, or is that just the one time?
That's the only time that I can remember encountering something like that, like a portal, an opening. But I have gone lately. I have been having these OBEs quite regularly.
Yeah, how many OBEs have you had? You told me that before, I think.
I probably had 12 to 15 of them just in the last 4 years.
Okay.
And one time they took me into this other dimension, and but it wasn't through an opening like that. It was different. And this other dimension that they took me into, it was just a big gray void. There wasn't any, you couldn't see any ground. It was just, everything was just a gray void. But I'll probably discuss that a little later.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
After that, I moved to Hawaii, and that was in 1997, and landed a job with a Utah company over there, construction. And and let's see, when was that? It was just before 1998. We were having a barbecue at my boss's house in Mililani, which is in the center of the island. And I had to work the next day. I had to go work on a truck. So I told the boss I was going to take off about 11 o'clock. So I had to get up early. And so instead of taking the freeway back, I took this 2-lane road. It was highway, I think it was 750. It's a 2-lane road that goes from Mililani to Waipahu. And Waipahu is where I lived. And about halfway to Waipahu, I seen this big walnut-shaped amber light above the Waianae Mountains. And it's right where that that naval the heck's it called? There's a naval base right there in the mountains, in the Waianae Mountains, and it's right where the naval base is.
Okay.
So I found a place on the side of the road. I pulled over, got out, I started watching this thing. I was really curious about it. And right as soon as I got out and leaned on the front of the truck, thing just slowly rose up above the mountains through the clouds, and then it just, like a light switch, it just blinked out. And then I noticed it was further down the mountains a couple miles. Then it would move along the top of the mountains. Then the thing started zigzagging all over the place, blinking out, coming back on, just doing some crazy maneuvers. And then it came over and approached me. And that's when I got scared. And I said, to heck with this. And I got back into the truck and took off. And when I got home, I was wondering if I could see it from my backyard. So I went into the backyard and I got up on had a block fence, and I got up on top of it and I looked. I couldn't see it. There was too many rooftops from other houses in the way. So I went in and got ready for bed, and I stayed up till about midnight or so, maybe just a little bit after. And then I finally went to bed. I turned the lights out. As soon as I got into bed, became paralyzed, couldn't move. I was trying to force myself out of this. And the door opened up, my bedroom door opened up, and these 6 little grays came in. Except for these were different than the other grays I've seen. These had kind of a light bluish tint to them. And they had gray bodies, but their head and their hands were kind of a light blue color. And I believe they was wearing some kind of a uniform or something similar to that, a jumpsuit or whatever. But, and I'm sitting there trying to scream. I'm trying to snap out of this, and I can't. All I can do is just move my eyes. And the blanket levitates off me, goes to the foot of the bed, and drops down onto the floor. Then I just levitate off the bed, and very slowly, head first, I went right out through the bedroom doorway into the living room. We turned, and then 6 little grays come out. 3 got on each side of me, and we just very slowly turned and moved through the dining room, by the kitchen. And this is what's weird. I don't remember going out the front door, but I remember what seemed like we went through the door in the wall. I know that sounds strange, but it seems like we just went right through. And we got out into the front yard, and we proceeded out to the edge of the garage. And as I'm looking up, I'm trying to force myself to move, and I can't. And I can see this almond-shaped craft, light, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It was up above the garage, probably, I don't know, maybe 500 feet or so up. And this blue beam of light, a real faint beam, comes down and it hits me right in the head, and then I become vertical, and I just slowly start rising right up this beam towards the bottom of this craft. And I'm just almost hysterical. I'm trying to scream. I'm trying to snap out of this, and I can't. And I get up above the garage, the roof of the garage, and then I start thinking to myself, I better not. I don't want to snap out of this up here. I'll probably die. If I fall down. So I just went for the ride after that, and I could see my service truck was parked in the driveway. I could see the trash cans out on the street. I could see the neighbor's house. I could see up and down the street.
Yeah.
It was weird. I know this was happening because I could feel the breeze and the coolness of the night.
Okay.
And when about just before I reached the bottom of the ship, Walmart is like about 4 blocks from where I lived. I could actually see the parking lot in Walmart from up there. Throw that in.
Yeah.
And so as I started to enter into the bottom of this, it's just like everything just blacks out on me. And next thing I remember is I'm laying on this kind of a metal table.
Yeah.
In this round room. There's no windows. I don't see any doors in there. But I'm still paralyzed. I can't move. All I can do is just roll my eyes back and forth. And there's 3 entities, 3 on each side of me, looking down at me.
The same grays?
What's that?
The same grays as took you out?
I don't know. They look the same, but
okay.
I think they were bigger because they was quite a ways above me, looking straight down.
Okay.
And they had they were kind of bluish colored also. Not real blue, just a real light bluish hue to them.
Yeah.
And I think these were taller. These might have been tall grays. I don't know.
Okay.
But they looked, they had the same type of eyes. The mouths were real similar. Their facial structure was similar to the littler ones. But anyways, I'm sitting there trying to force myself. They don't communicate with me. There's no communication at all. And after a while, I'm sitting here just trying to force myself to move, and I can't. I'm totally paralyzed. And then all of a sudden I hear a kind of a real loud wham. And next thing I know, I'm hitting the floor right next to my bed.
Okay.
Totally naked. I don't have any clothes. My clothes is laying at the foot of the bed with the blanket. And I get up, and I'm just dripping wet with sweat. And I said, what the hell just happened,
Yeah.
And so I got up. I was shaking. I went in, turned the TV on, turned the lights on, sat down, calmed down, turned the TV off, went into the bathroom, took a shower, come back out, went back to bed. Immediately, as soon as I got back into bed, I became paralyzed again.
Oh, no.
Trying to move. And I think, here we go again. And trying to force myself out of this, and I can't. I don't want this to happen anymore. Don't let me happen. I'm actually praying to God that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work. People say it does, but in my case, it never did work, other than that first time in California.
Okay.
But anyways, everything I didn't see the grays the second time. Nothing came through the door. but it was like I blacked out in bed, and then I came to again, laying on that same table, looking up, but I'm by myself. There's no other entities with me in that same round-looking room.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I heard a wham again, and I hit the floor next to my bed again.
Wow.
And it happened that night. And I got up, and it was like 6:30 a.m. in the morning. And when I went to bed, when I went to bed the first time, it was just a little past midnight.
Yeah.
And I had a clock on the wall, and I remember looking at it. That first time when they dropped me by the bed, I got up, I looked at the clock, and it was like 2:30 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
And it was almost 3 when I went to bed. And after they dropped me off the second time, it was a little past 6:30 a.m. in the morning.
Wow.
But that was a bizarre. That one was real bizarre.
Can you
And
tell
at
when they're
that
coming?
time-
I just want to know. Can you tell when they're coming now? Do you have a sense? Do you know when they're going to be there?
Yes, I do now. And then in 2008, I started having encounters with a different type of entity. This one, oh God, I don't know how to describe them other than a humanoid type. Real rough, almost scaly looking skin. Could be a reptilian. I don't know.
Okay.
But I started having encounters with this type of an entity. And how it would start is I'd get in bed, and at that time I was having so much weird things happening to me. I quit sleeping in that back bedroom, started sleeping in the living room on the couch.
Wow.
I felt safer there, but these things, they follow you wherever you go. They know where you're at all the time. So there's it's like a pillar of light would appear between the ceiling and the floor. Not real bright, but just, about as bright as maybe a 75-watt light bulb shining.
Okay. Yeah.
And this thing would just slowly move across the living room floor. And I would sit there and watch this thing. And when I first started seeing this, there would be like a shadow person following it, or something would try to manifest by it, and then it would go away. This happened like 4 or 5 times. And then after about the 5th and 6th time, it's like whenever it would show up, I would pass out. Everything would turn like a fuzzy white, and I'd black out.
Okay.
And then when I'd come to, I'd be face to face with this entity, and we'd just be face to face for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Is this the one you gave the name to?
Yes, this is the one that told me his name, but he didn't tell me his name until like 2009.
Okay.
And at this time, I didn't know what his name was. He didn't tell me.
Okay.
But he would be face to face with me. It was like he was downloading information into me. That's exactly what it felt like.
Do you have any sense of what the information was?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But he has downloaded, when he took me into that other dimension,
okay,
he downloaded information into me like that, and he told me it was how he had an apparatus there that allows them to transverse the dimensions. And he gave me information on that. I wish I could remember it.
Wow.
I would love to have that information.
Have you ever been regressed?
Yeah, twice.
Did it help?
No, we didn't ask about that. We was searching other things. But let's see, where was I?
Yeah, with the 2008.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the entities. And then after about this staring contest that would last for about 3 minutes or so,
yeah,
everything would turn fuzzy white again, and then I would wake up. I was in this little small room, and I'm sitting on this armless chair looking at this, what looks like a chalkboard on the wall.
Okay.
And there's symbols. This entity would always be over off to the side in my peripheral vision. I'm paralyzed again. I can't move. All I can do is just move my eyeballs.
Yeah.
And he's telling me that you have to watch these symbols. You need to learn this.
Wow.
And symbols would appear, and they would change about every 3 seconds to a different symbol.
So it's a single one symbol at a time?
No, it was one group of 6 symbols.
Okay.
The first 2 times she had me looking at these, it was just one row of 6 symbols.
Okay.
And after the third time, there would be 6 rows of 6 symbols, and they would all change about every 3 seconds or so.
Wow.
It was weird. I don't know if anybody else, I know there's been a lot of people that had these symbols shown to them. And there was one symbol that he showed me that was by itself, and it looked like a capital P, like a great big, I have no idea what it stands for or what it means, but for some reason, this giant P is probably the key to all these symbols.
Wow.
If I could just figure out what that P stands for.
Have you ever tried to write out the other symbols? Like, you've seen people's description. Did they look what other people are describing as sort of like a squiggly type?
Yeah, they kind of look like the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Okay.
Kind of sort of like that. But anyways, these encounters all the way through 2008, clear almost to 2010, would always start out like this. There'd be the beam of light. I'd be watching it, and then all of a sudden it was like I'd pass out, and then I was always with the entity face to face.
Okay.
And then I'd always end up in this room. Except for one time. Everything was the same. The beam of light appeared, and I went. It was like I was standing face to face with him again. It was like I passed out, except for this time, it looked like I was on some kind of a ship or something. And I was standing in the front of it, looking out into space.
Yeah.
And the entity came up beside me, and he says, "Don't worry, Ron. We're going to take a little trip here. We need to get you used to this." And so everything seemed really nice. I was calm. I wasn't worried. I wasn't scared or anything.
Yeah.
It almost had like a loving feeling after like the 4th or 5th time. And then everything turned to fuzzy white after that, and it was like I passed out again. And then I found myself sitting in that same armless chair watching symbols again. And I know Jim, I think it was Jim Mars, he's had experiences like that, watching symbols.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of
Jim
people.
Sparks, yeah. Jim Sparks, I think you mean.
Or who?
Jim Sparks, I think it was. That
Oh,
was
Sparks. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
Sparks. No, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very
So
similar to what you were experiencing.
Yeah. And so this went on and on and on. And now I got to kind of go back in time just a little bit here. In 2006, I was in an industrial accident. It was a pretty severe accident. I got some spinal cord damage, and they had to take me up to Salt Lake, and then I had to have an operation to put fix my back.
Okay.
And after this operation, I was having a hell of a time. I couldn't dress myself. I had to have help. I couldn't even put my shoes on or my socks.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bend over or anything. And so I started to meditate about that time. And I was meditating for whoever's out there to help me. Help me with my back so I can move better and stuff.
Yeah.
And I kept meditating for months and months and months. And then finally I gave up. I figured, nobody's going to help me. And then all of a sudden I started having these series of encounters with this LV entity. And just before the last encounter where I flew the craft, started the same way. The beam of light appeared. I passed out, and then I'm face to face with LB. Well, he didn't tell me his name at this time, but I'm face to face with this brown-colored entity, and then he tells me that I'm going to take you on a trip again. And so I kind of pass out, and then I find myself when I wake up, I find myself laying face down on this kind of a stainless steel looking table. And I'm just sitting here kind of rolling my eyes around, and I can move my head this time. And I'm kind of turning around and looking, and it looks like a laboratory setting. And there's these entities in there, and they're all wearing a hood and what looks like a gown, but their hands are showing. And I can tell that the same entities as the one I've been having encounters with. But there's also humans with them wearing white lab coats. And it's pretty busy in there, and there's all kinds of gadgets and apparatuses. And so, anyways, this one man in a lab coat, he comes over and he tells me, he says, "Don't worry," calls me by my name, "Ron, don't worry, nothing's going to happen to you. The entities want to look at your head, and they want to look at your back." He said, "They're not going to hurt you." And so he goes away, and the one entity comes over, and he's looking at me, and he makes this god-awful screeching noise. I don't know if he was trying to communicate or what. It was almost like fingernails.
Well, it appears that we have the attorney's
type. It was terrible.
Okay.
That's the only time that these entities has ever made a sound to me. And so the one guy in a lab coat, he comes over and they bring this apparatus down from the ceiling. It's got a waistband on it. It looks like a giant spider, and he hooks this thing around my waist, clamps it, and then he's got these like hinged rods coming off of it, and he hooks my arms to it, and my legs to it, and this thing is just moving me around in different positions. And so this entity, he comes back over and he's talking to me, but it's telepathic. He's, mind to mind.
Okay. Yeah.
and he tells me that he wants to examine my head and my back where I had my back surgery. He wants to see if he can help me. And so I'm laying there. I'm real panicky. I'm really worried about this. And so this machine starts moving me around, and it kind of puts me in a spread eagle, pulls my legs apart. And man, I mean, it hurt. It hurt like hell. I was screaming, begging him to stop. I thought he was going to split me in two. Then he gets up onto the table, onto my back, and he's telling me, don't worry about it. He said, this is for your own good. And he grabs my head and jerks my head back with his one hand, and his other hand, he's got these big, 3 long, bony-looking fingers, real long, and they got appendages on the ends of them.
Okay.
He sticks those things in my mouth, and then he puts pressure up against my upper palate, and he slowly brings them out and runs them up my face and across the top of my head. He does this 3 times. And then he lets my head go, and then he's doing something to my back. I have no idea. It feels like he's inside where my spine is.
Okay.
And I mean, it's hurting, and I'm just screaming in agony. It's just, I can't stand it. Stop it. Stop it. I'm just screaming this out. And then all of a sudden, then it just stops. And then he gets down off the table, and then he takes this big, looks like a big metal ball bearing, probably about 3 inches in diameter.
Okay.
He crams this thing into my left ear. And I mean, he's just twisting this thing. I don't know what he's doing. And then he takes and sets it down, takes his finger, then he grabs my ear and he pulls it out. Feels like he's going to pull my ear right off my skull. And then he takes his finger. I got a little metal ball under my skin on my left ear, right between the lobe and my skull.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there rubbing that thing, and he tells me, this is an implant. You were going to have it removed. He says, don't. He says, you leave it alone. You don't mess with it. You don't ever have it removed for any reason whatsoever.
Okay.
And it scared me because he was real stern about this.
Yeah.
And what was weird is 3 days before this, I had called Roger Lear.
Okay.
He wanted to take this out, and I finally decided to let him take this out.
Wow. Okay.
And he was going to have me come to California to do it. And this is weird. It's just, I after this encounter, I had to call him back, and I told him there's no way I can do it. And he says, let me guess, you had an encounter and you were told to leave it alone.
Wow.
That's exactly what he told me.
Wow.
But anyways, he got done. He says, you leave it alone. You do not remove it under any reason whatsoever.
Wow.
And so then he goes away. And I think it was before he left, he told me what his name was. It was a really long name. There's no way in hell anybody would ever remember it.
Yeah.
And I says, Elby? And he says, that's what you call me.
Okay. Wow.
Elby?
And did you get cured? Did it work?
What's that?
Did it cure you? Did it cure you when you were back?
It did. When I got up, when I came to on the couch in the living room, I got up. I could get up. I could dress myself. I could put my shoes on. I could put my socks on. And man, oh man. And I tell you, first thing I did is I'm not kidding you. I got down on my knees and I prayed to God, and I thank him or whoever it was for doing what they did.
Wow.
And to this day, my back still hurts where I had my surgery, but
Yeah.
I can do things. I can go out, I can hike, I can,
Wow. Okay, we got about 5 minutes left. I got to get two of the good stories in here. You got to tell me flying the ship, and when they ask
Right.
you where you want to go, and they take you on this trip. So go to those two, and then we'll see how much time we have left.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, this is the last physical contact that I had with LB.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
My phone was beeping. I was just wondering.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't hang up.
No, you're still there.
And so, anyways, the last encounters is in 2009, just before 2010. It's the same thing. The beam of light comes. I'm with LB face to face. Everything turns a fuzzy white. I pass out. And then I find myself in this square cubicle in this big room, but I'm way up high, like where the ceiling is.
Okay.
And there's other cubicles around me. And there's a person, a human, in each one of them by themselves. And these are gold-colored cubicles. And I'm looking down below, and I could see all these entities. There must be a dozen of them down there walking around. They're busy, whatever it is they're doing. And the one comes over and stands kind of underneath me. And then my cubicle just slowly descends down. And the end just opens up. It wasn't a door or anything. It was like a solid cubicle, and all of a sudden the end was just open. And so I get up and walk out. LV meets me, and he says, it's time for you to learn what's happening to you and why. And he tells me, you've been programmed from birth to fly this ship. And he says, we're going to take a little trip. And he takes me over to there's a big old chair there. Looks like a big plastic chair. Everything on this ship looks like it's one piece. It's beautiful. There's no seams, no nuts and bolts, nothing. And he has me sit down in this seat. And there was what looked like a console, kind of. It's not attached. It's weird. It's like a virtual console. It's kind of like a hologram or something.
Okay.
Kind of floating in the air.
Yeah.
In front of this seat. But anyways, I'm sitting in the seat, and there's holes in the armrest and indentations, and he has me put my fingers in these holes and lay my arms in these indentations. And everything, it's like it was made for me. It actually was comfortable. And so, and I asked him, I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And he said, everything is inside you already. All you have to do is think. Your thoughts will control the ship. And he says, where would you like to go? And I says, I would love to go out into deep space and see the Milky Way galaxy from a distance. And he says, okay, if that's where you want to go, that's where we'll go. But he says, I'm going to warn you first, as soon as we take off, because we were right next to Earth, from where I was sitting in that seat, the whole front of the ship just kind of opened up, and I could see outside, and I could see the Earth off out there. And he says, when we take off, he says, you're going to feel some really bad G-force, but it'll only last for just a brief moment. And when we start to dimension hop, start to traverse the different dimensions, then you won't feel any G-force. And I says, okay. And I just said, I want to go out in deep space and see the Milky Way galaxy. And all of a sudden, it was like a roller coaster ride from hell. I couldn't hardly stand it. And it was just, I thought, the G-force, I thought it was going to kill me. But it was just real brief, wasn't even a second, and then it was gone. And then he told me telepathically, we're going to start transversing the dimensions. And when I'm looking out the front of this ship, there's different scenarios going on out there as we it's like the pages of a book. You just thumb through them and flip through them real fast, let the pages flip by. Okay. That's what it reminded me of. And everything lasted about maybe a second or so. And then all of a sudden, everything comes to a stop, and we're sitting out in space, and I see the Milky Way galaxy way off out in the distance. It was it was awesome. I loved it. And he says, you need to go back.
Fascinating.
What's that?
No, go ahead.
Oh. And then he says, it's time we have to go back. We can't be out here very long. So.
Okay.
I want to go.
Go ahead.
That?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so I think back Earth where we started from, and then all of a sudden the same scenario happens. Take off, but I didn't really feel any G-force this time. And it was like flipping through the pages of a book, and then all of a sudden it felt like a second. We were back by the Earth, and I could see the Earth off in the distance down there. It was just awesome. There's more to this, and I'll write it out, send it to you.
Yeah, you've journaled all this stuff, which is we'll have to get this in some sort of book where you can put it all in a book for people to read, because you've got a lot of information. We've only gone through part of your story. The last question I want to sort of ask you is, the Mormon Church seems to be more sympathetic to the UFO issue, and you are a member. Can you tell me you've talked to some people about it inside the LDS Church? Can you tell me what their reaction was?
Yeah, I had a call from my stake president here in Price, and he told me that he wanted to interview me about my encounters, because I guess he had heard some of my radio shows that I've done, and some of my interviews. But anyways, and so I went and talked to him. And I don't think this was an official church interview. I think he was more curious as to what was going on. And he was really open to it. I was really surprised. I thought they would, admonish me and kick me out of the church and excommunicate me for it. And then I've had my Elders Quorum president do the same thing with me. And they were I was really surprised how open they were.
Fantastic.
To it.
Fantastic.
Haven't been excommunicated yet.
Yeah. Ron, this has been fascinating. Can you come on again another show and we'll go through some more of your stuff, because you've got an incredibly complex story that people have only heard a little bit of. Is that be okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. Anytime you want. I've got, like I said, this is just a part of it.
Yeah, and maybe we'll take you down to the KGR studio, and we can do a little video interview, because yours is one of the better stories. So thanks so much for being on, and let's do it again sometime.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
It was an honor. Thank you. And we'll send it back to Race.
You've been listening to the Cameron Files. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or program content without express written permission from the KGRA DB is strictly prohibited. The Cameron Files, in direct cooperation with the internet website presidentialufo.com.